I really shouldn't have to introduce this guy, because when I was a kid growing up, as we all are, we all think we're quite good. And then there's this young lad who's catching all these really big carp down south. I think the first time I really took notice of him was when I saw, I think was it a Premier Bates catalogue?
Premier Bates.
When was that?
Premier Bates.
When was that?
Premier Bates was 87.
Yeah, I think I'd heard on the grapevine about this young lad down south who was catching loads and loads of big fish. And I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. And I saw one or two pictures of him in the Angus Mail with fish. And I saw this article in, I think it was the Premier Bates catalogue, and I looked at the fish he caught and thought, bloody hell, how many fish has that guy caught? And to many people, he's been under the radar. He's been under the radar because he wished to be under the radar, but he's one of those guys, a bit like Ian Booker, people like that, who weren't very well known by the guys up here, but were, and he'd probably be embarrassed about this, sort of legendary status to most of us up here who knew what he was like. And I was called it, I mean, there's no disrespect to the original Terry. Am I allowed to say that, or is that... He was the original Terry. He was Terry before there was the new Terry. And really what he hasn't caught is not worth really catching in many ways. The good thing about him is that he's not been, and I don't like to use this phrase, corrupted by it all. He hasn't got his own range of tackle, his own video.
Not yet.
Not yet. But he's working the task. He's got his own book. The good thing about it, of course, is he's caught the fish and he's kept himself to himself. And most of these fish, these pictures, you will have never seen before, not unless you've been on the CMEX forum and seen the pictures on there. But you certainly won't have heard the stories, because I don't think really Terry you've ever written before.
No, never. None of these stories have ever been out before.
Never ever written before. Even Ian Booker was interviewed for carp fish and things like that. So Terry's stories have never been revealed before. So I'm really honoured that he's actually come to Leeds. I was amazed when I picked up the Terry Dempsey in Leeds. Amazing. So
I really wanted to come to Leeds. So
why?
Well, I fished Longfield, I fished Raysbury, and in that time I met a lot of anglers from Yorkshire, and I've got quite a few good friends up here. A few of them are here tonight. So
yeah, it's amazing that when I was down south, the name that 2 or 3 people who I respected greatly on their lips was this guy. Chris Ball used to tell me about, there's this young lad down south and he's catching all these carp, and he's called Terry Dempsey. And there was 2 or 3 people who gave me his name, so for him to come up here and talk to us is a great honour. I don't go to a lot of slideshows because I ain't got a lot of time, but even I've come tonight, although Brian has paid in a typical Yorkshire fashion. So give a big round of applause to Terry Dempsey.
thank you, Jules. Welcome everyone tonight. I just want to start by looking at the first slide here, which is with the book, The Urban Myth. A lot of people have been asking me about this front cover, saying to me, what's all this about? 7, 8 rods in a setup. And this is a really old slide. If you have a look at this, you can see fingerprints. It's a really old, I mean, it's about 1987, I think, this picture. But we all just looked at it, me and a couple of my friends, and we said, that's got to be the front cover. And what it was, we weren't poaching that day. We was like 4 mates, all fishing together, having a great time, having a party, and we all put our rods next to each other's, and somehow someone took a picture along the line, and this was it. The lake here was a place called Hainault Forest. It's a lake in Essex that in the 80s held 30-pound carp, which were really rare in those days, as most people here would know. And this lake was so busy with anglers. Many really well-known anglers from all over the south of England, Kent, Essex, London, all over, come to fish this lake because it had 1 or 2 30-pounders. If you have a look around here, it's a really strange thing because this is all weed. There's a big weed bed here, a massive big weed bed. Now this lake had no weed in it at all, none at all. But what we did, me and a couple of friends, we imported the weed from another lake. And what we'd done, we went and got a truck full of weed and we put it all the way across the front of this swim. And we started baiting the area. So this is how much we were into our fishing. We was bringing the weed in, and so this picture means a lot to me in that sense. I remember it really clearly, and it's great times. This little lake here was in Epping Forest. This was the first lake I ever fished for carp. It's called the Perch Pond, Wanstead Park, and it was in the middle of council estates. It was 10 minutes from West Ham football ground, and it was absolutely manic, full of people, like kids everywhere, picnickers, but round the back of the islands, this is like round the back of the islands, the lake went through there, it's about 3 or 4 acres, but round the back of the islands was really wild, and used to get a few carp swimming around the back of there, and this is an old slide. I hooked my first ever carp on luncheon meat, just in front of these reeds here, and it took about 20 yards of line off me, it took me through loads of snags, and I lost it. But from that day on, that was it. I just never wanted to do anything apart from try and hook another one, and try and get that feeling I had when that carp took off that day. I couldn't catch them out of that lake. It was such a hard lake. There was 1 or 2 mirrors in there, and you think, I mean, nowadays most lakes are really heavily stocked. I think there was 2 mirrors and 8 commons in that lake, and it was so hard, it was unbelievable. So what we did do, we started to look for other waters where we could catch carp, and there was a lake in Essex called Lake Meadows, where there's a lot of well-known anglers who used to fish up there, Nash, Lee Jackson, Derek Street and people like that used to fish, and I used to get a train up there every weekend of a Friday evening after school, and this was one of the fish that I caught out of there. It was £15. I think I was about 12 years old there, so brand new to carp fishing, and that was my first ever double, and I was so made up. And the mad thing was, I caught that on a stolen boilie. In them days, getting a good boilie was really important, especially on these Essex lakes. And there was one angler there, and he's not alive no more, but he was a really good angler, Richard Bilberry, and I used to net his fish for him. Like every time he had a take, I used to go and stand in his swim, and I'd have the net, and I'd say, Rich, can I net it for you? And he used to go, yeah, go on, tell. And I'd net it for him, but he didn't realise I used to snap the boilie off his hair and put it in my pocket. And this was from then, like, you know, but, you know, so it was a good day. I did eventually, once I got used to catching carp at Lake Meadows and a couple of other easier lakes, I started to get to grips with the Perch Pond. The Perch Pond was a really strange lake. The normal methods what you'd use on carp lakes, like boilies, hair rigs, bolt rigs, never really made any difference on the Perch Pond. So I tried everything. And what I did find, all the fish that I did catch were right in the margins, literally under my feet. And this fish was caught on a 3-line pace bait. You can see me in my school clothes, my nice mum's leather jacket, what she bought me and everything, and I used to go home slimed up. She weren't happy about that, but this was one of my first ever carp out of there. And catching a carp out of the Perch Pond when I was a kid was unbelievable, because they really were hard fish to catch. This was the other Lake Meadows. You could see all the old bivvies around. I mean, a lot of these old pictures, the first pictures in this slideshow are coming from old 110 cameras, and they do look more like oil paintings. It was Meadows was a great lake, and what we used to do to catch the fish was cast right tight to these islands. So we'd be putting our bait right underneath there with our stolen boilies. This is a Meadows common. I think this was my personal best common at one time, £13. You can see one of the first sort of the old new brollies and the Nash sides. This would have probably been about 1983. And I had quite a few, I had loads and loads of doubles out of Meadows. It's a real quality lake. Here's a winter double from Meadows. Again, you see the old setup there, the old octonics and carp sack with the slings drying out on top of the brolly. It's a great shot. I remember catching that fish middle of January. Nice welcome double. Another Bolton Lake Common, Wanstead Common, and you can see these really dark old fish. Again, this one would have been caught from like a 3-line pace bait, or the other method I used to use over there was a floating cake. We used to make up a floating cake that we got from Kevin Maddox's book, Carp Fever, and we used to just dangle that in front of the reeds, bait up, and we had some nice fish, and we're using the floating cake. Another wildie in my school clothes. My finest trousers on and my finest jacket. But this was the king of the lake, and to be truthful, this was the king of Epping Forest, this fish. I mean, Epping Forest probably housed, I don't know, 30 odd lakes, but I'd say that this was the biggest, or if not, it was one of the biggest carp in the whole of the Epping Forest lakes. And I fished for this fish for about 2 seasons in all, and I chased him everywhere. In the end, I caught him on a 3-line cake about 2 foot from the bank, and it was, catching this fish was unbelievable. I didn't have the scales. You can see the old net. I didn't really have any decent tackle. It's not my net. You don't see many of them around now. But you see the old bicycle in the background and people walking around. It was a proper park lake, right in the middle of London, 5 minutes from West Ham football ground. And I mean, I don't know about nowadays, but I'd probably get shot, wouldn't I, for putting a carp on there. But I didn't really know any difference. But when I caught this fish, I was blown away. And my dad, who never ever dreamed that I was catching fish like this, sort of turned up as I caught this, and he just went, "What have you caught? I can't believe it." And I didn't have any scales to weigh, and he took me down a local shop and bought me a pair of Avons. So from that day, my dad realised that I was a proper carp fisherman and I was into it, you know. And he just was blown away. He thought I was down there catching little roach. But this massive carp, I think it was a 26-pounder, but an absolute cracking fish for them times. There he goes again, scaly. He was my dream fish. I spent so long chasing that carp. I really did, like, you know. In the close season that year, I fed him nearly every single day, bottom and top. I followed him all around the lake. I used to sit on the islands. There used to be a policeman over there called Albert. He used to come round on his bike, on his push bike, and he always used to get me and try to drag me back to school, you know, because I was always bunking school. I really was bad for it, and it was only because of the carp. I'd be sitting in the bushes watching this fish, but I caught this one day when Albert weren't looking, so I was well happy. Here's a typical Meadows picture. You see all the kids here float fishing and the boats. Again, real proper park lake fishing, but a great learning ground. I used to use a lot of tiger nuts and peanuts over here. I couldn't really afford boilies. I knew what the good boilies I needed to get with the caseins and everything, but I couldn't afford them. All these fish mainly were caught on peanuts or on tiger nuts. That was my main bait in these days on Meadows. This is a good catch over Meadows. I think I had about 10 fish over a few days on peanuts. And it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant lake. I mean, some of my best memories of carp fishing have come from Lake Meadows, even though there was only one 20-pounder in there. I really do. If I look back now, I just think they were such magical times. And so does the other people who fished there at the time. And I think most of you in here will say the same. It's not really about how big carp are, you know, or how many big carp are. There's something else about carp fishing that really does it. I think it's the magic of being there, and it's, you know, fish like this, you just couldn't get no better. I mean, that's one of my best catches ever. You know, I've caught fish from many different lakes, but I'd say that's still one of my favourite catches. This was the biggest carp that lived in Lake Meadows. It was a fish called Nobbler, and what we used to do, all us boys, we were all Londoners, and we all used to get on a train, 5 or 6 of us every weekend with our shopping trolleys and go up to Meadows. The main fish in there was Nobbler. Everyone was mad to catch Nobbler. None of us had ever seen it on the bank, and then one day I caught it, and I swear there was a crowd of about 150 people there. We had people doing crowd control for these pictures. There was, if you would have had the camera further out this way, you would have seen so many people. We were fighting them off. And do you know why I was taking pictures of this fish? Someone jumped in my bivvy and stole my boilies. But I think it was karma because of all the boilies I'd stolen over the years. So, but catching Nobbler was a massive fish. Once I caught Nobbler, I went back on the boating lake, which was a lake near West Ham football ground, because in there was a big common. Well, I used to see it in the water. It was probably about 16 pound, but to me, in those days, a massive common. And I ended up catching this old mirror scaly again, which is the same fish as what we see before. I caught him another 2 times. Here he was at 27.5 pound. I caught him on a single boilie under the rod tip 3-line. And then that's how I used to fish over there. I used to try casting out in the middle with leads and bolt rigs, but it just wouldn't work. So I used to just 3-line margins, paste baits, boilies. I used to use air rigs. I did start using air rigs over there then, and they were working. And what I used to do, I used to just tie a little bit of £1 line on the bend of the hook, and I used to tie a bead on there and just mould a bit of paste around the bead. But I think this day I'd skinned them, just boiled them for 30 seconds. Maple flavoured boilie that was. But what an old carp that was, scaly. It was really, I mean, that fish, I loved it so much. It was like my pet really. And one day the local club took over the lake and threw a load of fish in there, and the poor old fish died, and I was so sick. From once I fished the perch pond and I fished meadows, I wanted to go somewhere different. I'd heard about all the lakes at Darragh and places like that, but there was no way I could get there. And I was told about a lake called Hainault Forest, which was only about 5 minutes, it's about a 5-10 minute drive from my house, and it was 2 buses from my house. Once I'd gone over there, that was it. I'd entered the world of big carp fishing. People wanted to catch 30-pounders, you know, big 30s. There was a few 20s in there, and I met a lot of good anglers. There was a lot of Kent anglers on there called like Dickie Caldwell, people like that who were fishing it, Mickey Richardson, you know, all loads of old school anglers. Bernie Erie, he was fishing over there, Jimmy Burns. There was so many good anglers on there, and when I went over there, I was told straight away, look, don't fish this lake. You see, it's too hard, you'll get your tackle nicked, you'll get chucked in the lake, and they will literally, that'll be it. So when we started fishing it, we was petrified, because we were told that we were going to get chucked in and get all our tackle burnt out and everything, and that's how it was in them days. You know, especially over there, it's right next to the council estate. And so when we started fishing it, we just used to put loads of traps all around our tackle. So if anyone come along in the night, we'd see them and everything. It was a good stock lake. There was about 40 carp in there, I suppose. It was about 6 acres, but it was only 6 or 7 mirrors. And everyone wanted to catch the mirrors. You know, they would have fished to catch. There was a few commons in there, but this is one of the mirrors out of there. Catching any mirror out of Hainault Forest was a big result. And I think this one weighed £20, but was I happy catching this? An absolute cracker of a fish, and any fish out of there was a result. It never took me long to get into grips with Hainault. I did have some time on my hands, which a lot of the other anglers didn't. A lot of the other anglers were really well known, fishing Savoy, places like that, were really struggling on Hainault, and I see people sitting there for 2 or 3 years without even getting a fish. But I soon got to grips with it, and I think it was probably down to sitting there 4 or 5 days a week over beds of bait, particles and stuff. And one day I got this fish in the net, and I put it on the bank, and we looked at it and we just thought, this is absolutely massive. We put it on the Avon scales and it busted them. And we didn't know what to do. And then we realised we got the big one on the bank. And as you can see by my face, I'm absolutely shocked at this fish and the size of its belly and everything. I mean, I think this was 1985, so, I mean, there's a lot of old school anglers in here, and you'll probably appreciate a fish of that size in them sort of years, 1985. It blew everyone away. I mean, and this lake was so busy, it was unbelievable. For 6 acres, there was just bivvies all around it, all year round. Obviously, because it had 30-pounders in it, and everyone wanted some of them. But this was a cracking old fish. Here it is again, big Hainault fish, £36 8 ounce. But there was a bit of a story to this. I'd caught this fish and I was absolutely blown away. I did get it weighed properly. An angler called Max Cottis. I suppose most of you have heard Max Cottis. I mean, Max was only a young man then as well. But he'd just come back from Casey. He just caught a 67-pounder from Casey. It was 1985. And we didn't have any scales to weigh this fish, so we put it in the carp sack, and someone had a car, and we drove around to Max's house, and we got Max to come and weigh it, and a £36 8 ounce. But I was absolutely blown away. But the thing was, what I've done is, I went all the way home to London, went home and put the film in the chemist. In them days, you used to have to put your film in the chemist, give it a couple of days. I waited a couple of days for my film to be developed, and I went flying back over the lake with all my tackle to have another go, because there was other big fish in there as well. But that night, I left me swim, went round the other side, sitting with my mates, showing them the pictures of me big un, and then when I got back, they'd stolen all my tackle. And I had everything stolen. I was only 15, and that was it. That was my world gone. You know, I looked, everything was gone. So I think it took me a good 5 or 6 months to get some gear again and to get back on the bank. But you know, sometimes with the highs, you get the lows. But I mean, that fish was worth it. I don't let them nick me tackle every week to catch that fish. There he is again. You see all the old bibbies in the background, new brollies. Used to get, I remember there was a couple of anglers over there, they'd have a new brolly and they'd have like a plastic sheet over the top. And that was just common in them days, weren't it, you know? But absolutely, just mine, I was blown away, and I still am now really. I mean, sometimes you catch these fish and you just don't appreciate them as much as you really should. And when I look back now, it really does blow me away, these old carp. And this was a really special fish, this anal fish. I think it was originally a Sutton fish. There was a lot of fish nicking going on around Essex, around Kent in those days. It weren't really fish nicking as such as you'd see today. It was more spreading them out. You know, there'd be, I don't, you know, you've got to condemn it nowadays with all the diseases and that. But a lot of the big fish around in those days, fish like the silver end fish, the Hainault fish, the tunnel fish, were all stolen from Brooklands and places like that, which were heavily stocked. One or two fish put in a lake here and there, and that's how this Hainault fish come about. But he was an absolute cracker, and he did make £40. There's not many 40s. If you look into the records of 40-pounders caught in the 80s, there ain't that many, and this was one of them. There's an angler called Tommy Gelston caught it in 1986 at £40 12 ounce, and I think it was the Essex record. I think it just beat Nash's when he caught the silver end fish. But an absolute beast of a carp. I went back on Hainault after the catch. Once I got my gear back and I decided I wanted to carry on fishing Hainault. I wanted to catch all the mirrors out there. There was another mirror in there that was absolutely stunning. I'd seen it on the bank. It was the first 30 I ever seen on the bank. I see it before I caught the big one. A young angler called Paulie caught it. And once I'd seen that fish, I was absolutely blown away. It was such a cracker. The colours and so I decided I needed to get back on Hainault and fish for that fish. I didn't have a lot of money, but I did have a bit of time. And the way I started fishing it was walking out the baits. I found out in the middle of the lake. The lake was very silty. It was about 1.5 feet deep of silt. And I walked out there one day and I realised that there was little hard patches out there, really tiny hard patches. It was hard to pick it up with a rod because where the lead's going into the clay, you can't really pull it out, so the rod really bends round. And then it's hard to recognise whether it's silt or clay. But as you see, I was always in the lake. I used to walk out in the water all the time, and my feet were always wet. No wonder I'm getting rheumatism and that now. I spent half of my teenage years in the lake, and I was walking peanuts out to the middle, and I was absolutely started hammering the lake. I was catching them one by one, and this was the third biggest carp in the lake, called Eldridge. I caught 7 fish that week, which was unbelievable for Hainault, and all of them on double peanuts. And I used to cook my peanuts in milk. I don't know where I got this from, but I did. I used to just boil it in milk. And also another little trick I used to do when I was taking the peanuts out, I used to take yoghurt out there as well. I used to get pots of yoghurt and pour it over my spot, like strawberry yoghurt, and you know, it seemed to work. And also I used to put a lot of milk out there as well. I used to pour bottles of milk over my spot out in the middle. What I did have was, I've said a lot about this in the book, in them days, the markers we used to make them ourselves obviously, you know, you don't get markers like, I used to make them out of big lumps of polystyrene. I used to carve them into seagulls, so it used to be like the shape of a seagull. And you can't see it in this picture, it's just behind my jumper, but it was a seagull sitting out there and it was absolutely perfect. You know, no one had sussed out where it was. But after a little while they sussed me out, like the other anglers and stuff. So we started getting old decoy ducks, you know what they used for shooting? And we used to stick decoy ducks out there and bait the decoy ducks. But I mean, this fish here, Eldridge, when I caught this, I was so happy. £27, but I mean, a monster of a fish for them times, for me anyway, so brilliant. And there he is, returning Eldridge. I can see here, I look around sometimes at these pictures and I can see I was the only one there. At the time, Hainault was fishing really hard. People had been struggling for weeks. People had been 3-4 nights all through the season and not had a fish. But all of a sudden, with the peanuts out in the middle, I started having them. And as you can see, there wasn't another person hardly on the lake as I was catching them. It's another Hainault, one of the Hainault mirrors. I caught this one a number of times. I think this was round the back of the islands again, fishing on the tiger nuts and the peanuts. It was my main bait over there. That's what I caught nearly all my fish out of Hainault Forest on. was tiger nuts and peanuts. This was the old friendly mirror. It's a nice old carp. This was a friend of mine called Larry, and he was a good lad who come from near where we lived on the estate, and he used to come over and swim our baits out for us. We used to pay him $5, and he used to swim our baits out, and he loved it. But here he was on his way back from the sticks. We used to fish off the corner of this island. There was a load of little sticks, and in them days, I mean, we never had a spod rod. We knew what spods were, and we had Jews spods, but we just didn't have no tackle. My tackle was unbelievable. If I look at what I was using in those days, it was incredible. Mostly like cut down ledger rods and stuff like that, and you know, we was catching fish. I never even had any swivels. When I caught the big one out of angle, I didn't have a swivel or nothing. You know, I used to get a bead and wrap the line around it 3 times. We knew how to use swivels, we knew what we needed, but we just didn't have any money. We were all kids from a council estate, and Larry was one of them, and he used to come down, earn his bit of money and swim the baits out. So he was a good lad. He's still a carp angler. This was a lovely carp that was in Angle Forest, what we called the peach. Caught this one a few times as well, an absolute cracker. I think it originated from Walthamstow Reservoirs, another fish that was someone had put in there, you know, pre me fishing it. But this is a cracking little fish. Caught this one around the back of the islands, particles again. And I think he grew to about 25 pound and he got nicked. We believe he got nicked anyway. All of a sudden, the peach never turned up. And he used to get caught a few times and then he stopped getting caught. And either someone stole him or he died. But in those days, a lot of fish used to go missing, and I think he probably got stolen, which was a shame for us anglers. But this was the one I was after. From the first time I fished Angle Forest, there used to be, some of you will remember the old carp fish show with an angler called Vic Cranfield. Well, Vic Cranfield caught a 30 out of angle in about 84. He called it Heartbreak. I don't know, some of you might remember it, and I think he really struggled on there for a couple of years, and he caught a 30, and he'd written an article about him, one of the original carp fishers. That fish died. This fish no one really knew about, and all of a sudden it just appeared out of nowhere, and my mate caught it on the surface, and then here it is here. I caught it about a year later, again tiger nuts, 32.5 pound. I never ever publicised this fish. When I caught the big one out of angle, it went in the angler's mouth. The only reason it went in the angler's mouth is because I had the tackle stolen, and I put a big thing in the angler's mouth, because all the Essex boys who I was fishing with at the time, they were really anti-publicity, and they just went, look, if you publicise these angle fish, we're not going to talk to you no more. So being a kid, I never ever publicised this fish. No one ever knew I caught it. Only, even my mates who fished Angle Forest at the time, it's only lately that they've seen this picture and they've gone, I didn't know you caught that. I said, of course, no one asked, so no one knows. And it was 32.5 pound, and what a carp. Absolutely, and it was a fighting machine. You know this fish is still alive, and it's in a lake called Camelot. It got stolen, and it's in a lake called Camelot in Norfolk. I see Jim Shelley catch it, and I phoned Jim up, and I said, Jim, that fish, because he went, oh, it's a cracking fish, it battles. I said, that is one of the oldest carp around. That's been around for donkey's years. I mean, this is 85 when I caught this now, and that fish is still alive now, and he's still a mid-30. But an absolute, did it fight? You'd take 40 yards, I caught him again after this, but every time you hooked him, he'd take 40 yards of line off you, flatten your rod, and it took me 40 minutes to get him in that day. Absolute battle. You can see the old camo gear, what we used to wear in those days. You know, the old white t-shirt and white cords. Because over there and all, there was a lot of pretty girls over there, so we was after the girls as well. We used to fish over there, and just a part of the fishing was also meeting all the young girls local, so we all used to dress smart for our fishing in them days. And there he is there. He's an you know, still again, what a carp. And I think back sometimes, I look back at fish like this and I think, my God, did I catch that, you know, what a fish. And for the time as well, in the days it was. From then on, once I'd caught that fish, we started to go to other waters. We realised, because I used to fish with a mate of mine, Tony, you'll see a few slides of him. We grew up together, we went to school together, and once I'd caught these big angle fish, we needed to move on. We met a couple of anglers who knew Kevin Maddox. One of them was an angler called Kim, and another one was called Paul Pynan. Paul Pynan had done an article once in a CAA book. You'll probably remember Paul. He's a really good angler. Used to fish Lockwood. We got talking to him, and he said to us about going to Yateley. So once I caught this fish, we wanted to get Yatey tickets, so we went and bought Yatey tickets, 20 quid. But we only got down there once or twice, but we absolutely loved it down there. And then we realised we really need to spread out. But having no money, hardly any tackle, and no car, it was really hard. We were just relying on lifts all the time. Around, I think it was 86, in the autumn of 86, I made a massive breakthrough. There was a young lad who used to fish Aingle Forest, and I got really friendly with him, and he was a nice lad called Graham, and his nan lived in Cambridgeshire. Anyway, he said to me, I know this lake in Cambridgeshire, what hardly anybody fishes, and it's full of big scaly fish, absolute crackers. So I said, oh, please take me there. And I think he used it as bait for me to be his real mate, like, you know. He used to say to me, oh, I'm going there next week, try and make me jealous, like. So one day, I really begged him. I said, Graham, you've got to take me, you've got to take me. Anyway, he took me there, and this was the lake. It was like, after fishing park lakes, all, you know, for years and years and years, all of a sudden, I'm at a lake which is a proper carp lake. I've read all the carp fishers, I've read all the magazines, I've read all the books, the Carp Strikes Back and everything else, and I'm a big mad carp angler, but the lakes I had were absolutely all with the roughest as lakes, you know, you couldn't leave your tackle for 2 minutes without the rods getting nicked. All of a sudden I'm at this absolutely amazing lake. The only other lake angler who was fishing the lake at the time was Lenny Middleton, funny enough. And an angler called Dave Thorpe. Some of you might remember Dave Thorpe, he was another good angler in the 80s. And Lenny, obviously, the legendary Lenny Middleton, he was fishing it as well. When I got there, I couldn't believe it. You know, it was one bank you couldn't fish. All this here was all these reeds went round. It was like a big sort of, I don't know, sort of like an L-shaped lake, and one part of it was all thick reeds, and you could only fish along this bank here and around the side. When I first went there, Graham told me, he said, Tell, you won't catch them out of here. He said, like, even though you've caught them over anal, he said, you'll struggle here. He said, I've been on here 2 seasons and I've had 1 fish. So I said, well, it's worth me a go. Anyway, my first trip I had 5. And I was only there for about 3 days. And he never wanted to take me back again after that. But what he'd done, he was a bit cheeky, Graham. When he took me there, he took me in the middle of the night. So I couldn't see where I was going. Even though I didn't have a car anyway, he took me there about 1 in the morning. I think he'd give me a couple of beers, you know, and a smoke or something like that. He got me so I didn't know what was going on, and he drove me up there. And this was the type of bloke he was. And anyway, he didn't realise I'm a bit cute, and I soon found out where I was. And when he took me back, I mean, I had 5 fish that trip, and after that, he never expected me to go back. But how could he keep me away? How could he keep me away?
He didn't have a tracksuit and a cigar, did he?
Do you know what? Someone else asked me that the other day, and I'm thinking maybe he did.
Did Jim fix it for you?
Yeah, Jimmy did. His name was Graham. Graham fixed it for me. But I tell you what, it was the worst thing he ever done, because all of a sudden the Londoners was on his lake, and here's another part of the lake. Absolutely cracker, yeah. But so he was unbelievable, our Graham, but he really made a bad mistake taking us up here, because I felt really sorry for him after, because we absolutely emptied the lake. And these are the sort of fish we were catching. I mean, I think that week I had about 6 or 7 as well, because we were going over there. At the time I was using Martin Cow's bait, SBS. It's about 86, and he'd just come out with his EAs. Remember them EA flavourings? And I had the strawberry jam and Cornish cream. And I used to mix it all up with my caseins and my calcium casinates and all that. But the edge I used to have, which I believe was my edge, was Angel Delight. I used to put an ounce of Angel Delight in every 10-ounce mix of bait. And I'll tell you, my baits, because in them days we never had a lot of food. So we used to have to eat our bait sometimes, and obviously I didn't want to eat bait, or we didn't want to eat. Peanuts were nice, tigers were nice, but my baits of Angel Delight were nice as well. But the fish love them, and you can see they're absolute cracking fish. All the Cambridge fish we caught down there were absolute, and you know, we never see hardly any other anglers. It was unbelievable. We hardly ever see Lenny, we hardly see that Dave Thorpe. It was 1 or 2 people fishing it, and we'd have the lake to ourselves. It was just a dream come true. It really was. And we'd go down there in the close season and bait up. You know, my mate used to drive me down there. I was fishing with him, he had a kite, just passed his test. We'd go down there, bait up our spots, and go down there at the start. We used to get there like 4 days before the start of the season and camp up. And the fishing was unbelievable. And later on, we took the fish meals on there as well. We went back after Darren, we went back over there with the fish meals, and they'd never seen a fish meal. We got them going on the fish meals. I think I had 9 fish out in the first few days. But they were absolute beasts of carp. The biggest carp in there wasn't massive, not to nowadays standards. In those days it was. The biggest carp was 26 pounds. But there was about probably 15 or 20 20s in there, which for us was like unbelievable. And I suppose up in where we are now, you anglers appreciate this more than probably a lot of anglers down south who are spoiled with sizes of fish. But as I've always realised, these are some of my best fish I've ever caught in my life. And as you can see, they're absolutely pristine, all the scales. I think they were, I'm not sure if they were leanies. I always call them leanies because of the scales all over them. But you can see what a beautiful lake it was. Absolutely cracking. This is right at the end. I hid this picture for years from my mum because of my fag behind my ear. You know, it was always kept at the bottom of the drawer indoors, you know, so I'm a bit dreading her when she reads a book and she sees that fag behind my ear. I'm still her little boy. This was the big one in the Paxton, in the Cambridge. It was a fish called Sergeant. I think we caught it a number of times between us. I only caught it once. Here I caught it in the winter, middle of December, absolutely freezing cold, and I see something roll. And you could see the bars out in the water. As the light hit it, you know, just as the clouds break and you get a bit of light, you used to be able to see the bars start glowing, and that's where we were catching the fish, on tops of the bars. You know, it was a bit, in the gullies, we couldn't get them in the gullies. All the fish we were getting off the tops of the bars in the winter, but this was Sergeant, absolutely cracking. I think on the other side he had 3 scars. He had 3 long scars along there. I was well happy catching him. About 25 pounds, but he was the biggest one in there. This is one of the absolute beauties out of there. This would have been on the fish meal. I mean, you know, these old dark carp like this. I love it. There was 2 or 3 fully scaled in there. This was a friendlier one. We got him a few times. There was another fully scaled in there. My mate Mickey Jermaine caught, and I never caught him. And I haven't got a slide with him here, but I'd like to get a slide with him because he was an absolute beast as well. But this would have been at the start of the season on the fish meal. We absolutely tore it to bits. They just loved the fish meal. They'd never seen anything like it. And there being old fish like this, we were going down there, we were rolling it on the bank, putting out 10, 12 egg mixes and fishing over it, and that's how we were getting them. Again, another beautiful carp from there. It was such a lovely lake. It was full of weed. It used to have spiderweed. I don't know if anyone there has come across the spiderweed. It's really coarse. It's like, I don't know, it's like a pineapple or something. You know, you'd think it cut your line, but it didn't really cut your line. It was really funny stuff. But there was a lot of pads in there was reed beds. It was just the ultimate, and they loved the floater as well. We used to get them on the floaters. It was just the ultimate carp lake, it really was. There was an island swim as well, where we used to go out on the island and fish off the island, which, I mean, going out there, you know, we just felt like Robinson Crusoe sitting out there. It was that nice. After 1987, start of 1987, in the spring, in the close season, I had an unexpected letter come through the post, which I forgot about all the time. I'd been offered a place for the Darren Flakes in Kent, which at the time were like the holy grail for carp anglers in the south, especially where I lived. You know, I mean, I was told, like, places like Hainault Forest, where you're looking at catching maybe 120 a season or a couple of 20s a season. On Darren, you could catch that in a night. And we were told that, so once we got our Darren ticket, we were over there. The first year I fished it, the first couple of times I fished it, I absolutely loved it, but the weed was so bad. The tip lake was a lake I really loved, and the weed was so bad. You can see the weed behind me there, behind my jeans. It was piled high. And the first trip I'd done on there, I found some fish. They were coming off of a little island. And I had some protein baits at the time. I was using like Martin Cowell's with a strawberry and cream, and the Angel Delight as well. And I started baiting this little bar. The bar, what it was, there was a gap in the island, and I don't know if some of you remember Tim's, because Tim used to fish the Tip Lake quite a lot, Tim Paisley, and he used to talk about a swim called the Gap Swim. Now the Gap Swim was really full of weed that year, but just through the gap, there was a little channel in the weed, and I see this little channel, and I put a rod out there, and I started feeling my leg just touching the bottom. for some reason, I've been feeling my leg down for a long time. I don't know how I got it, you know, it just come, we just used to feel our legs down on the bottom and stuff. And I could feel my leg just tapping down. So I started filling it in with bait, loads of proteins out there, and every day at 6 o'clock I had a take. I'd done about 9 nights in that swim. I mean, I used to do a lot of time in them days, and I'd done 9 nights and I had 9 takes every day, and I swear, they used to, dead on 6 o'clock, they used to come out around the back of this gap, and I'd get a take, and this was one of the fish. This is one of my first ever tip lake carp, over the moon, it's about 24 £, absolute cracker, loved all big dark fish, big fins, and most of the fish we were getting through this trip, because of the weed, we was having to go out on the airbeds. We'd have an airbed in the swim, and as soon as the fish was weeded up, we'd be on the airbed, or one of my mates would be out on the airbed, and we'd try and get the fish moving, because the weed was absolutely horrendous. Same trip, this was it, the first ever trip on the tip lake. I had 9 takes, and this was the king. The fish that I'd always heard about this. Colin Walford's dad, Bill Walford, some of you might remember that name, he caught this at £30. There wasn't many 30s in Dartmouth when I first fished there. I think there was only 2 30s in the whole of Dartmouth. One in the tip, one in the big lake. There was some fish that did go 30 in the winter, but this was one of them, and it wasn't 30 here, it was £29 I think, or something like that, 28.12, but it was a fish called Scarbar, and I just absolutely adore. One of my favourite carp of all time, this real cracker. Stevie Briggs was here when I caught this. Steve was fishing in the next swim. I'd had a take, and the fish had weeded me up straight away, like they did, every one of them did. And one of my mates went out on the airbed, and we got it moving, and we got it going, and in the end we got it in the net, and Steve come walking along, and Steve knew the tip lake fish. He went, "Well done son, you've had Scarbar, one of the best fish in the lake." So I was so happy catching Scarbar. And you can see, all we were doing in them days were rolling baits. I mean, we just got into it from Anal Forest, and as you see here, all our money was going on eggs. You know, we'd just sit there every single day. I mean, this was pre-Premier, and people didn't know a lot of this because we never publicised any of our fish. People heard about us when we were using Premier, but we was doing this long before Premier. We were catching fish on proteins. And this fish here, I think every single day I was putting a 6 egg mix in this little hole in the weed, and they were coming out and having it. All hand rolled in the old days. Another one of my favourite swims on the tip lake. This is a swim called the Pallets. You see the old Delkins there, and I could never afford the 55s, these were 155s I think, or 157s. I had 155s, then I had 157s. The 55s and the 57s, you could reverse the handle, couldn't you? You remember that, and the old Delkins. But I had a little thing about this swim. I caught a lot of fish out of the swim, and one of the main things that I used to do was fish it totally different to everyone else. Everyone used to fish up in these gullies. There used to be like 2 or 3 big bars running down here, and they'd all fish up in the gullies. And I did fish that. I used to put a rod there, but I never done all that. But what I did started to do was cast over to this far margin over here, and I started really baiting it heavy. I was walking around there and baiting up regular, and I caught a lot of fish. And a lot of people sort of at first, "What are you fishing over there for?" You know, that's a bit of an odd place to fish. But for some reason, that was the hot spot in the swim in the end. And when I moved off of Dartmouth years later, that's where everyone used to cast to. But there used to be a big gully down here, and the fish used to come down this gully and no one ever fished for it. For some reason, everyone used to be fishing out there, because you could have fished 10 rods in this swim. It really was a cracking swim, the Pallets. And this is the area that I was casting to. This is the gully. There was a bar running through here, and it used to run to a set of pads here. And I used to get them right off the tip of this bar, just on the drop-off. And I used to get them here as well, just on the drop-off of the bar. And the other place we used to cast right over to these trees. And I used to bait all this bar and all this gully. And I got some tremendous catches from that area. Because I think it was just totally new. They'd never seen the line angles. And also the lines were running tight down the back to the bars, so they were all stuck away. You know, and it did work out. But the Tip Lake was a beautiful lake. I absolutely loved. I don't know if anyone in here ever fished the Tip Lake. But it really was it's probably my favourite lake of all time. I mean, it's absolutely devastated now what they've done. You know, it's not even the same lake, but in them days it was a dream lake for me. It's a Tip Lake in the winter. Again, absolutely beautiful. This fish here was another one that I really wanted to get at the tip. Again, keep going back to these carp fishers because they really had a big influence on a lot of people in the 80s. And there was a picture of this one on the front of one of the carp fishers with Mickey Slide. You probably remember. Big picture, cracking shot, Mickey at the start of the season. They'd done a big massive article about him and they was having barbecues and stuff, weren't they? I remember that. Anyway, this was a fish called the Pilgrim. Again, this come from the area I've just shown you, but it come from the other side. I was fishing in close and I was baiting the area, really like rolling loads of baits, and all I was getting was tench. I was getting tench, one after the other, and they were all big tench, 5 or 6 pound. Then I had an eel. I had about a 4 pound eel, which was amazing. I was like, oh, it's a big old eel that was. And I really was going to move off of here. I thought to myself, no, I don't know, you know, maybe all these tension, that's not good. But then all of a sudden, one of the rods went, and it was this fish, the Pilgrim. Really, probably one of the oldest carp in Darren, I think, as they say. It used to be the Long Lake, I think, like when Maddox fished it, and Lenny Middle, and people like that. It was one of the biggest fish in the lake in those days. The size of his tail, massive tail, and it's a beast of a carp. Here he is again, the old Pilgrim. One of the other fish in there that really was well known in the Tip Lake was scaly. Absolutely, I mean scaly, I'd seen pictures in Peter Springgate's interview and stuff like that of scaly. And I really wanted to catch scaly, and I eventually did catch him, and here was a capture in the winter. It's the middle of February. I was fishing a swim called the Hayfield, and it was a swim that never gets fished in the winter. And I started baiting it, and I was just throwing like 10 or 15 boilies on a little spot in the margins, and I kept doing it for a little while, and then I put a rod in there one day and I had him within an hour. So it's such a good little method to keep little spots going like that. Because what I was doing, I was fishing on other parts of Darren at the time, and I used to get, like, I'd be fishing on the big lake, and I think to myself, right, let me get a few little spots going. So then I'd walk up to the tip, I'd roll a 6-egg mix, I'd walk up to the tip, and I'd start feeding a little spot like you do. And I had 2 or 3 little areas going. It used to work for me. As I say, this one was within an hour of casting out. I had Peter Jones with me. Remember the old Peter Jones, and Martin Daly at the Yahoo crew, the old 8-yard crew, and Terry Petterbridge. We was all sitting, it was a freezing cold northerly wind. We were all sitting in my bivvy cooking beef burgers. I always remember it so clearly, and the rod went, and it was scaly. Was I happy catching him? What an old carp. I mean, you just don't see carp with scales like this. I mean, how long those scales were, I don't know, but they were massive scales. Beautiful fish. It's in the old setup, the old Lafuga chair and gas bottle and Delkins. The mud was atrocious. I've been talking to the lads over here earlier about carpet. We used to use a lot of carpet in the old days. You don't see people using carpet nowadays. But for some reason I ain't got no carpet down there, but I should have done. This was another fish that come from one of my baiting up bits. Baiting up a little bit on the Long Lake. Long Lake was another nice lake at Darren, which wasn't hardly fished that much, really, considering the pressure on some of the other walks there. I started baiting up a little spot along the side of the bar, and all of a sudden I went and done a night and I caught this one. The old milk proteins again. In the winter I changed. I used to go on one of Jeff Kemp's baits. I used to use eggnog. He used to do an eggnog and caramel, and I used to mix those 2 up, eggnog and caramel, and that was a good bait for me. All I used to do was drop it down to 30 mesh casein in the winter. I used to chop me 90 mesh casein for me 30 mesh casein, and it seemed to work. I don't know if it did, but we used to say there was better leakage in the bait. That's what a lot of people used to say. But he says, I love this fish. I love the colour of these fish. They just blow me away. I love the greys and all these dark colours. And he's got such a lovely lateral line on him, this fish as well. Very prominent. Another fish I caught off this spot. Again, I absolutely adore this carp. It's the only capture I know of it, to be truthful, but I mean, the picture of the way the scales stand out and that. I mean, I think that morning when I caught that, loads of people come round because a couple of people see it and they just went, oh, we've got to go and get so-and-so, we've got to go and get so-and-so. You know, we all wanted to see it on the bank because it was a real rare carp, you know, and it was absolutely beautiful. It's like £24, but again, one of my favourite carp. This fish was a well, I remember this capture well. It was one of my favourite captures because of the way I caught it. Everyone, the tip lake was fishing really hard this winter. It was a real struggle. No one had had a fish for months. And everyone was using the same. At the time, it was like the early days of the Richworths, Tutti Fruities. Stevie Briggs, all them, were all using the Tutti Fruities in those days. Pete Noonan, a lot of Pete Jones, everyone using Tuttis. But they was only putting out like an handful. They'd just be putting out 4 or 5 baits and fishing an hook bait or a stringer. And I just thought I decided to do something different. I had 12 eggs. I think it was 12 or 18 eggs or something. And I rolled the whole lot up into massive big 22mm boilies. And through the middle of winter, and I went and poulted them out right in amongst a load of ducks. There was about 20 or 30 coots and tufties and everything. And I put the bait right in the middle of them. And I just thought maybe, with them diving down on the bait, they might induce the fish. Anyway, all of a sudden, the swim was mad. I think I had every duck in Kent there in my swim within a couple of hours, and you know, you could see them coming over, flocks of them. It was like David Attenborough. And they were coming up with these massive boilies, and the seagulls were coming down, and it was madness. And my mate was sitting with me, and he just said, "Tel, what have you done? You just ruined your swim." And I went, "Oh, I don't know. You know, you've got to try these things out." Anyway, we had a few bleeps, and we thought, "Oh, that's a tufty." But no tufty come up, and then another few bleeps, and it was him on the end. And it just shows you, I mean, even to this day now, the carp work with the birds, they really do. And I've seen carp myself, and I'm sure a lot of you have done here as well, literally snatching baits out of ducks' mouths, and vice versa, and I've seen them wrestling with them as well. And I just think that a lot of people go against the birds on the lakes. I know they're a pain, but you can get them working in your advantage. And this one they definitely do. Because what they do, especially in the winter, if you want to put a lot of bait out, the birds will clean your spots for you. Which is what a lot of problem it is. The fish are not getting no bait in the winter, so they won't feed. So the birds are doing an absolute brilliant job. You can overbait in the winter, and the birds will clean your spots for you. So it really does pay off, and it proof of it in this picture. This was a lovely old carp that was in Darren, one of the old, I suppose the 18, the tip lake, a fish called the parrot. Made it to about £36 in the end. Here it is here, I think maybe scraped a 30. I had him a couple of times, I had him once at 29. But he absolutely loved the fish meal. Every time I got in a swim, get a big bed of fish meal out there, the parrot used to turn up. But he used to shit all over me. He loved his bait so much. And that white t-shirt, you can't see it there, but behind there it's absolutely brown, where he'd been crapping all over me. But he's a really lovely carp parrot. Not one of the, you know, even though he had a bit of a dodgy mouth, he wasn't one of the really regular ones in there. He was quite a sought after fish. A lot of the anglers have done well on there. Never got him, the parrot, but he seemed to like me, like the fish meals. This was a rare carp in the tip lake. You know, like you get in all lakes, you get some fish that are a bit friendlier than others. This one was a very rare fish. I think I only see it on the bank once or twice. And a lot of other anglers I know never really see it on the bank. I just love the colours of this carp. Again, over heavy baiting with the fish meals was the one. Rolling the baits, getting them out there and sitting on them. There's a tip lake, absolutely beautiful. I think this was June the 16th, this photo was taken. When we first fished on there with the fish meals, we took the fish meals over there, we got a bit of stick, we got a bit of flack off all the other anglers. Because we turned up at the lake on June the 16th or the 15th in the car park, and there was about 90 people there, 100 people. But where we'd fished down for the previous winter, we got to know a lot of the anglers there, so we were on friendly terms. And we were all chatting anyway. A couple of them have walked up and they'd gone, "What bait are you using this year, Tel?" So I said, "I've got this new bait." So I've opened my bag up and I've got all these massive donkey chokers, like 25mm boilies, all glugged with oil. Absolutely glugged up, and they stunk to high heaven. There was flies all around me. And it was madness, and a couple of them just looked at me and went, "You ain't going to catch nothing on that, are you? Especially up the tip, you ain't going to get nothing. What are you doing, Tel? I thought you had good bait," and I really was getting a lot of stick. And the mad thing was, when we set up, the first day of the season, you're reading the book, I mean, what we'd done is, we had a massive big bag of bait, I don't know, what is it, about 50 egg mix or something like that, me and Tony. Must have been getting on, I don't know how many baits, but a lot of baits, all massive ones, and we put the whole lot out. And then the following day we rolled another lot and we put that lot out as well. Anyway, for the first 4 days of the season, no one had a bite on the whole lake. Now the tip lake used to fish well right at the start and then it would quieten down. So now we're getting a lot of flack. Anglers, we can hear them walking past us like tutting at us and everything, you know, sort of saying, "You're ruining the lake." And it was a bit like that until we broke the deadlock. I think we had 9 fish in a night or something. And then they all wanted to be our mates. And they all wanted some of the bait. And this is one of the fish that we'd have on the old fish mills. Again, the old white t-shirt, it was brown all over. But I mean, what really was one of the hardest bits of fishing I've ever done, I suppose, because we were constantly rolling and baiting up. You know, it was like, all our money, everything we was doing was going up the shops, getting trays of eggs, and it was all going on fish mills, the whole lot of it. And we'd just sit there rolling them all day long by hand. But it was paying off. I mean, some of the best fishing I've ever had in my life, it was over there at the time. This is a great shot, I really like this shot. This is rolling bait on the bank, old style. This is Stevie Wade, he's the head bailiff now at Sutton. He's about 40 years of age. There's Tony, my old mate Tony. You can see him here with a big ball of paste. It's me rolling them 2 at a time by hand. Frank the Blank, he used to fish Savay and everywhere, Harefield and that. You know, this is I'm 25 years old, this picture. But you can see, that was our job. That was what we was doing. We got Steve on our team. He started the season at Johnson's with Stevie Briggs and that. Anyway, he was one of our mates, so we said, "Steve, you're on our team now." But he only lasted about a week and he got a life ban from Leisure Sports for leaving his rods. But yeah, great days. I mean, we would just sit there rolling, literally 60 egg mix is on the bank. I mean, Frank, he's looking at us, you can see, he's just going, "You mad bastards." You know, and it was like that, and the banks were just full of boilies being boiled. And the old mixing bowls, which were coming in handy. You see, that's Booker's Bend, very famous swim. This swim's called the Rails, and that swim's Booker's Bend. I think there was a bloke over there called Angus, and he was a lovely fella, Angus. Anyway, we was catching so many fish out of Rails. Every time we'd get in the sleeping bag and try to close our eyes, we could hear our lead going out in front of us, where he was casting in our swim line, you know. But we never mind. We ended up, we give him some, I think we swapped some boilies with him for some bacon or something, and he caught a nice fish. It was a bit like that in them days. This is my favourite carp out of the tip. I mean, I've caught him a number of times. Here he is, he's looking a lot bigger here, and it's scarbar. The weights of the fish started creeping up. We realised with the amount of bait we were putting in, the weights of the carp were really creeping up, you know, they were there. And all of a sudden I caught scarbar like a massive weight, you know, it put on about £3 in a few weeks, and you could see it was filling out, the scars were healing, you know, it really did look a different carp to when I'd caught him the previous season, when all he was getting was a few Richworths and an handful of Tigers. All of a sudden he's getting all these beautiful baits, loads of them, and he really did look well, you know, he was just mint, he looked absolutely mint. And I was saying to people, look, see this bait, these fish in here are going to grow, they're going to go through the roof, and they're going to look so beautiful, and they did, they really did. Here he is again, old Scarbar. I've got so many great photos. You know, some fish are photogenic. Some fish are a bit like people, they're photogenic, and he is a photogenic carp. He really was. Absolutely adore that carp. That's him again. Caught him this time off the top of a bar in 2 foot of water. I was baiting the top of a bar up one end of the lake, and I was doing it a bit slippery. I weren't letting no one see it. And I used to be able to get up a tree and I could see a little hole in the weed out on the second bar. And then I kept baiting it, putting like 20 boilies on there. And then one day I went down there, flew up the tree, and I could see this big dark shape out there on the top of the bar, just milling around, and I knew. So I went down there, 2 rods, flipped one on top of the bar, one just short, and a little while later, Scarbar ripped off, and here he was again. Do you know what? I'd caught him about 4 times. Mickey Daly netted him for me, and he went, "Tell, I think it's a new fish," and we thought it was a new fish. I think I was trying to convince myself that it weren't Scar again, you know. He was a cracking old carp. Yeah, this is another one. Again, another rare one, I'd say. I think they used to call this one the Unknown. It's got like a little flat bit on the top of its tail. I hope you like me disco socks, what I used to wear as well. Here's a great slide of scaly. Tony got him, that's my mate Tony, who I fish with. We went to school together. He got me into carp fishing. His mum, when we was about 10, his mum won the bingo, at a local bingo. She won about £10,000 and she bought him a load of carp gear, and there was me, I started fishing with him. And he got me right into it. And he's a great angler, Tony. He still fishes today. He's really quiet, you know, he really does. He keeps it all to himself. But here it is, scaly. I think he called scaly a number of times, but this is probably one of the best slides I've got of scaly. Really is awesome carp. It's a typical dark, big gobbling, big fish meal eater. I think that morning I had about 4 fish that morning again. Rolling baits. You know, we'd be up in the morning at dawn rolling baits. And as we were rolling them, one of the rods would rip off. And then the other one would take control of the bait rolling while we played it in. It was like that. We were proper fishing, really having a go. There's a famous old carp. This one was called up, there's no kids in it, Big Bollocks. And for obvious reasons. And he loved his fishing. Big Bollocks loved his fish meal. And I mean, I had a funny story about him, as it goes. What happened was, at the start of the season, there was a rumour around Darren that Big Bollocks had died. Someone reckons he'd had a walk round there in the close season and he'd seen Big Bollocks dead, or a big fish that looked like Big Bollocks in the margin. So we were all going, oh no, because that's the fish we all wanted to catch, obviously. One of them was Big Bollocks. I mean, such an incredible looking carp. And about 7 days into the season, or 6 days into the season, my rod went and I had Big Bollocks. And I was so happy to catch him, you know, I really was. And also that he was still alive for the other anglers. But the mad thing was, the next morning I caught him again. I caught him twice in 24 hours. And he was like, you know, I'm blown away. Poor old fish. I hooked him in the same place as well. But that's how much they wanted the bait. You put them back, they go straight back out there. There was a leather in the tip. I caught him about 5 times as well. Again, the fish meals was just dominating. I mean, even though it looks like, at the same time, there was probably loads of other anglers, no one was catching at all. They really weren't catching. And in the end, we had the lake to ourselves. They tried casting in our swims, everything, but it never mattered. It was just, they wanted them fish meals. And one of the baits, I've said to a few people, what we used to do, we used to use a fish meal, and we used to use cinnamon oil, which we used to buy off Nutribaits. We used to get Nutribaits cinnamon oil, and we used to put that in with a fish feeding juicing oil. And that was our bait. And I used to use salt as well in those days. So I mean, it was going back a long time. We used to put a lot of salt in our baits as well. Yeah, you see how old he is. Such an old carp. They really are ancient carp, ancient beasts. I mean, the head on him is unbelievable. Just amazing fish. Really are. What I'll put this slide in here, this is my good friend Martin Daly, just to get a sort of idea of around the 80s. I mean, Kent at the time was probably one of the hubs of carp fishing in the country. A lot of the good anglers, you know, your Jack Hiltons, your Hutchinsons, everywhere, had all been carp fishing in Kent. And the biggest fish in Kent at the time was about £34, and this was it, she. This was the Kent record. When Martin caught this, 87, I think it was 35.12 or 36. This was the Kent record at the time. And as you know now, the Kent record's what, £60 now, so £65. So I remember Martin catching this and coming down Darren and jumping up and down for joy. But what a gorgeous, another gorgeous fish she. Absolutely awesome carp. And here, the Kent record. This is one of our major slides, me and Tony, you know, in the old days. Brace of 30s in the 80s. And absolutely amazing. Big Bollocks and the parrot. I caught the parrot that night about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just got him in the net, and I looked in the net, and I see it was a parrot. I got him out, I weighed him up, £30 something, put him in, and then I heard Tony's buzzer. Tony was fishing in Booker's Bend, about 50 yards to the left, and I heard him sort of rustling around, getting out of his sleeping bag, as you do. And then a little while later he whistled over. We used to do Morse code. Where we grew up together, we had a Morse code. and we could talk to each other in the dark through like whistling and stuff like that, and he whistled over, he had one in the net. If he lost one, he had a different whistle. We were that in tune with each other, you know, we proper fished as a team. If he caught a fish, I was as happy. If I caught a fish, he was as happy, and that's how we fished. And it still is the same now when I fish with Tony. Although at the minute he's got, you know, a woman's took him over and he's under the wing at the minute. At the time, the fish I'd caught all the fish in the tip, apart from a few. And one of the fish that I really wanted to catch was a fish called H. H was probably the biggest carp in Darren for them days. There weren't many 30s, but one of them was H. And the reason it was called H was, can't really see it here, but it had like an imprint. It looks like a cattle prod. It looked like it'd been prodded, a H, on the side of him. Anyway, I was after him for ages. One morning I hooked this fish, I played him for about 10 minutes, and I lost him at the net, and I was convinced it was H. I was thinking, oh no, it's H, I can't believe I've lost H. I was absolutely sick. Anyway, I got my rod back in the water, absolutely gutted. 10 minutes later, the rod's gone again, and this time it was H. But the thing was, at the time, the Darren record was £32 something. So, anyway, as it was £32 something, we put him on the Avons, and he busted them. H busted the Avons. Someone had some salter scalps, and we weighed him, it was £34. That was a Darren record at the time. At the time, people were a bit suspicious. They were saying, oh, can't really see H being £34, you know, it's a big weight for him. Because it was, the biggest fish in Darren was, you know, like scraper 30 and all of a sudden £34. But the following year, Mickey Kavanagh caught that 38.12. And that was the Kent record. Eventually was the Kent record, and Mickey caught it. And I think about a few months later, or a year later or something, the old fish pegged away. But what a lovely carp H was. Catching H was it for me. But in one way, it was a very sad day as well, because I'd caught the fish that I wanted to catch on the tip, and I realised I had to move on. And it was a great feeling catching him, but at the same time I realised I'd lost probably my favourite lake I ever fished. Okay, we're going to stop for a break now, yeah? Thank you.